Ashraf Ghani, President of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. He will be joining us shortly via video teleconference. President Ghani grew up in the Logar province of Afghanistan. After attending high school in Kabul, he began his academic career at the American University in Cairo, where he earned a BA in anthropology. He later earned his MA and PhD degrees from Columbia University, and we're very proud to say that he joined the faculty of anthropology department at Johns Hopkins University, where he was a professor. He then went on to work at the World Bank for over a decade on various projects around the world. And in 2001, he returned home as the special advisor to the United Nations Secretary General's envoy to Afghanistan. And in that capacity, he helped draft the roadmap for a new democratically elected government in Afghanistan. And when that vision became a reality, President Ghani was appointed as Minister of Finance under the then President Hamid Karzai. His passion for building a brighter future for Afghanistan won him the Sayyid Jamaluddin Afghani Medal, which is the highest civilian award in Afghanistan. In 2004, he stepped down from his post to become the Chancellor of Kabul University, where he founded the Institute for State Effectiveness. A world-renowned expert in the field of state reconstruction, he also co-authored the book Fixing Failing States in 2008. In 2014, President Ghani ran for and won election to the presidency of Afghanistan. And we're extremely grateful for his willingness to take time out of his remarkably busy schedule to speak with us this morning. I would like to welcome Mr. President Ghani to SAIS and Johns Hopkins University, and we very much look forward to hearing his views. Also with us this morning is a member of President Ghani's administration, Dr. Mohammad Humayun Qayyumi. He serves as the Minister of Finance and the Chief Advisor to the President in Infrastructure, Human Capital, and Technology. And before accepting his current position in 2015, Dr. Qayyumi served as President of California State University, East Bay. And our conversation will be moderated by retired Lieutenant General David Barno, a distinguished practitioner in residence at the School of International Service at American University, and he's also now a visiting professor at our Strategic Studies program here at SAIS. And he was the senior American commander of U.S. and coalition forces in Afghanistan from 2003 until 2005. We all at SAIS are looking very much forward to this conversation today on Veterans Day about Afghanistan, and I would like to thank all of you for joining us today. Yes, and I'm in particular honored to welcome President Ghani to our gathering today. Mr. President, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dean Wali Nasser, General Barno, Professor Qayyumi, members of the Hopkins community, of which I still consider myself a member, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be with you, fittingly on the Veterans Day. Let me thank General Barno for his distinguished service in Afghanistan, pay tribute to more than 1 million American men and women in uniform who served in Afghanistan, especially to the families of 2,415 men and women in uniform who paid the ultimate sacrifice to ensure our freedom and your security between 2001 and 2018. I would like to extend the special sympathy of the Afghan Army to the family of Major Taylor, his wife, Jenny Taylor, and his children, Megan, Lincoln, Aliyah, Jacob, Eleanor, Jonathan, and Caroline. He was murdered, and he was much beloved. Let me thank the U.S. government and Congress for their support in partnership, and the American people, especially the taxpayers, for their generous support. Thank you for this opportunity for a conversation. Thank you, Dr. Qayoumi, for your presence, dedication, and distinguished service and friendship. I will touch on about 9 key issues. First, whose voice am I reflecting? That of the Afghan citizens. Simply put, the Afghan citizens are making history. Let me offer some illustrations. On October 20th, more than 4 million Afghans came to vote. They were not risking a traffic accident, they were risking their lives. That is a dedication to democracy and to freedom. Confirming the true message of peace, 2,906 of our ulama gathered together, issued a fatwa that urged peace in June of 2018. Displaying patriotism. The Afghan security forces. American losses in Afghanistan between 2001 and 2014 were 2,357. And since 2015, still much regrettable, but the entire loss of American forces in Afghanistan is 58 Americans. In the same period, 28,529 of our security forces have lost their lives and have become martyrs for our freedom. Claiming equality. The youth of Afghanistan speak for themselves. The women of Afghanistan speak for themselves. All the strata, and particularly demand for balanced development in the form of spatial equality, is equally clear. Seeking markets, Afghan farmers, men and women, speak of market access and not charity. Demanding justice and an end to impunity. If people think that Afghans want an unequal system where some men dominate everything, they need to think twice. The largest demand is against irresponsible use of force and the demand for application of rule of law. There is not a reform process that has been undertaken that has not received wide public support, from reform of the entrance exam to the university that used to be a source of immense corruption and now one of the cleanest, to entrance exams for the civil service, for teachers and others. In all these areas, the voice of the public is clear. To understand, facilitate, and shape the national conversation, I engage with my fellow citizens, both in Kabul and the provinces, on a regular basis. Why? Because the Afghan society is a stakeholder society par excellence, and unless you have a face-to-face conversation in a society which is not marked by caste or major class inequalities, you need to look each other in the eye and have a conversation. So when I go to each of the provinces, I see between 1,000 and 3,000 people in groups, and then we have a large meeting to sum up. Since affirmation of democracy on October 20th, I've been to Kandahar, Helmand, Paktika, Daikundi, and Bamyan. I've repeatedly visited all 7 of our Army Corps commands and have spoken to men and women in uniform, non-commissioned officers, and others. In Kabul, I average meeting 4,000 people a month. Why? To understand whether there are emerging trends and where the public pulse is. Based on this, I would like to argue that a new Afghan, rooted in his traditions, but embracing the world and keen to claim a place for our country on the world stage, is emerging. I'm honored to voice the aspirations of my fellow citizens and to deliver on their demands for reform across the whole of the government in the state. What's the context in which we've been operating 4 years? The major characteristic of the context is uncertainty. Part of this is the global picture, because we are living in one of those moments that this 19th century figure put it, all that is solid seems to melt into thin air. Terrorism and changing nature of war, the fourth industrial revolution, rethinking of globalization in international institutions and organizations, and struggles over the definition of the 21st century, definition of Islam, and regional cooperation or general areas of uncertainty. In Afghanistan, we've had to, in addition, deal with simultaneous transitions in security, political, economic, and culture of the state and society. In terms of security, we had to fill the gap left by departure of 100,000 international troops, most of them US, by the end of 2014. Since January 1st, 2015, the Afghan security forces have had to assume that burden, and they were like 14-year-old, suddenly assuming the responsibilities of a 30-year-old. But the change has been significant, I'll return to. Politically, I'm the first person in the history of Afghanistan to have succeeded my predecessor on the basis of the will of the people, and then to ensure inclusion, form the government of national unity with Dr. Abdullah, my key interlocutor in the election. Economically, the departure of over 100,000 American troops and around 600,000 contractors who are driving demand brought a nosedive to the economy. We've restored it now to 3%. In culture of the state and society, the culture of the state was one of corruption. Corruption was the culture of the state. In society, because the new actors are coming to the fore, and society and the state are engaged in a meaningful conversation that is broad, encompassing, and I hope extremely productive. As foreign policy has been inherently linked to domestic policy, we have to focus on renewing trust and partnership with the United States, our foundational partner, NATO, and as well as with NATO. With both of these partners, on the first day of our administration, we signed the bilateral security agreement and the status of force agreement that legally defines our relationship. And forged constructive relations in 4 other circles of our foreign policy: the region, Asia, Islamic world, and global institutions. Let me turn to the South Asia strategy that was enunciated by President Trump. The South Asia strategy has been a game changer, making every stakeholder rethink the premises and modalities of their engagement with the US and Afghanistan. The Afghan people had been waiting for 40 years for such a policy. By shifting from time-bound to condition-based approach, it has enabled us to focus on medium-term goals and take significant risks for peace. We interpret the condition-based approach as preparing the conditions for self-reliance through reforms, consolidation of democracy, and enhancement of reforms that will make the Constitution particularly the chapter on rights and obligations of the citizen, a distinctive institutional reality and not just an aspiration. To give concrete shape to the condition-based approach, we've formed a compact with the United States that is over 600 indicators, and progress on it is measurable, and it is measured. Equally, we're focusing on 2024 goals of self-reliance. Simply put, how will we pay for the state by 2024? And the most significant bill is that of the security forces. Currently, it's $6.2 billion, bulk of which comes from assistance. August, September were spent on a very detailed examination of this, and we have concluded that we can save at least $2 billion by economizing in the other forms into two packages. $2.4 billion goes to counterterrorism, which is our commando force and our air force, and $2 billion for security. Minimally, we can meet the goal of $2 billion by 2024, but hope to meet the entire cost, because we must show our partners that we are partners and not just recipients. The South Asia strategy, very significantly, is presenting Pakistan with a choice. We hope that they will opt for the constructive option to see a stable Afghanistan as an asset rather than a challenge. We hold the hand of friendship in the prospects of cooperation, because key to the fight against terrorism, and particularly to the fight against poverty, and positively the empowerment of our citizens, is regional cooperation. Let me turn to the war. In 1998, two Chinese colonels wrote a book that General Barno is, I think, taught and commented on. They described the wars of the 21st century as being unrestricted. We, unfortunately, are today the site and the battleground of an unrestricted war. There is no area of our life that is not attacked. Mosques, schools, universities, hospitals, public squares, any public arena. This is not a war that is waged against armies or by armies. It is waged against the people. And it's equally attacking our culture. It's attacking our religious harmony, which is of unparalleled nature in the region. It is driven by transnational terrorist networks and transnational criminal organizations. Drugs are a very important component of it, and it's important that the nature of the drugs and how it moves and who benefits from gets to be analyzed and focused upon, because it is a driver. It is made possible by state tolerance or state sponsorship. Without that tolerance or sponsorship, the containment would have been of different order and the challenge differently. We would like to suggest to differentiate between the war in Afghanistan and the war over Afghanistan. The war in Afghanistan is the war with the Taliban. And we acknowledge that, and hence our effort on peace that I've turned to. The war over Afghanistan is over the definition of two platforms: a platform for regional cooperation that we in global security, or a platform or a launching pad for regional stability through both terror and criminal activity. We will suggest with humility that the performance of the Afghan national security and defense forces needs to be judged by their sacrifice, of 28,529 martyrs in the capacity to fill the gap. There have been significant reforms while we've been fighting, but I'd like to salute the patriotism of the Afghan security forces, every single one of whom is a volunteer. We have no conscription, nobody is forced. And if there was not the patriotic impulse, I don't think that people would sacrifice their lives for a pay of $200. The fifth wave, this is a term I coined. We're facing the fifth wave of global terrorism, beginning with anarchism. And we would, again, humbly suggest that America's fight is against this wave rather than in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a site, it is not the driver of the war. Intensification of the war after the adoption of the South Asia strategy was predicted by us, and unfortunately, our prediction has come true. We hope that our other prediction, that this intensification will be followed by intensification of the peace process, will be borne out. As we speak, in the last week, another round of intense conflict is imposed on us, and we feel that this is another response to the failed effort to subvert the election. Everything possible was thrown to subvert the election, but the Afghan people defied them. Hence this wave, but we will, like previous waves, contain them. Peace. We are seeking peace from a stance of national consensus. I was greeted on Friday by a 6-year-old girl in Daikundi who's so self-confident that walked through the stands while I was shaking hand, holding my hand, and what she sang was that the children of Afghanistan want peace because they would like to grow in a secure Afghanistan. This is the demand and request of every Afghan. We've owned and led the peace process, but the opportunity for this peace process was created by the South Asia strategy. There should be clarity that the Afghan government is both the political will and the courage to undertake the difficult challenge of peace, and we demonstrated this by offering peace to Taliban without conditions. We equally offer peace to Pakistan to put an end to the undeclared state of hostilities between our two countries. Should peace not prevail, my other prediction that the two societies would go to a state of mutual distrust and increasing cultural and social hostility resembling France and Germany of 1870, 1914 is likely to happen. The assassination of General Razik in Kandahar is brought an intense level of distrust, and the tension is so thick that you can cut it with a knife. A society, when it verges on a consensus on defining an opponent, then becomes a difficult society to guide through peace process. But the space is open, and we need to open the space. Reframing the narrative and options. Initially, post 9/11, was one set of possibilities in hope for quick reforms that unfortunately Afghans who were in charge did not avail themselves of. But we are availing ourselves of the opportunity. And in this regard, what we have done with the region bears remarks. 4 years ago, Afghanistan was not part of any calculation in Central Asia or the Caucasus. Today, we're very proud that all of our Central Asian neighbors are looking south and we are looking north. We have been engaging the region in a concept that Toynbee first coined for us, namely in Asian, a roundabout where ideas, people, and goods flow and interact with each other is what is becoming a reality. Thanks again to Dr. Qayyumi. When the government was formed, Afghanistan was 9 separate islands of electricity. And in another 18 months, it will become one national grid. And this is the beginning of a set of massive, we hope, transformations of energy from Central Asia to South Asia. And TAPI and other projects are moving forward. Ceasefire, the June ceasefire was a testing of assumptions. The ulama of Afghanistan demanded it. I declared it within 4 days, and it was reciprocated. It was implemented with 98% success. 1% was minor variation, and 1% was relatively serious because it took place in places where the conflict had been very recent. The coming of over 30,000 Taliban fighters to the Afghan cities went without a single incident. Nobody lynched them. Nobody attacked them. What does this show? The society is a willingness to move forward and not be stuck in the past. Certain societies, in very difficult moments of transition, need a degree of historical amnesia. Over-focus on the past could cost us the future, but moving forward is extremely important. And the other assumption that the Taliban fighters will never accept was again proven wrong. Those are the ones who openly declared that they were tired of fighting. And most critically, once done once, all the justifications are gone. The fight today is no religious grounding. Not only the fatwa of the Afghan ulama, followed by the fatwa of the ulama in Indonesia, followed by the gathering of YC ulama, and the declaration of the guardian of the 2 holy mosques and the imams of Mecca and Medina are a testament to this. The Islamic level of agreement is being prepared. Elections. Afghanistan's central problem since 1747, where we've had continuity and Ahmad Shah Durrani formed the government, has been the problem of succession. Almost every time, with a couple of minor exceptions, succession was contested. The Constitution of 2014 provides the framework for solving a problem that not only Afghanistan, but historically all Muslim states and empires have not been able to solve. Succession now takes place through the will of the people. Circulation of the elite takes place through the will of the public. Because of this, the parliamentary elections are an extremely important marker of coming together. First, I would like to salute the people again, because there couldn't be a stronger affirmation than turning out against every possible threat where voting pools, election officials, people had been systematically attacked for months, where open declarations had been made to tell them not to participate. People participated. Second, 2,500 candidates participated. The debate was vigorous, and quite significant. The results have to be announced, but very significant generational change took place. A lot of young people came and engaged in the political process, which is extremely important. Our security forces displayed remarkable valor and discipline. Valor in the sense that for 6 weeks, systematically they created the conditions, and on that day, they delivered the enabling conditions. Our Air Force, within 96 hours, delivered essential and non-essential material to every place where ground conditions, road conditions will not allow it. And the technology, which a lot of international experts had told us was non-applicable to Afghanistan, in written reports, $1 billion had been spent on elections through the UNDP agency in Afghanistan. There wasn't a voter list or any other set of enabling conditions. But the technology that we spent our own money on has been received with remarkable welcome, to the extent that now members of the Complaints Commission that have gone through the provinces have come back saying that the people only trust, even if they themselves are candidates, the results of the electronic voting. It's a simple, clearly managed system, and it's important. However, these successes were marred by the managerial failures of the Independent Election Commission, and now the focus is that the process of preliminary announcement and final results of the election will be made credible. The votes need to be honored, and because the Election Commission is independent, the government in general, and I in particular, have refrained, and we have made clear that any interference by government officials will be sanctioned. And we have asked the Complaints Commissions that if there are any complaints against these officials and they are documented, I'd made it crystal clear that they will be either punished according to the law, because interference is a crime, or they will be dismissed. And we are totally committed to that. Equally, let me be clear that we are totally committed to holding the presidential elections in the spring. We're choosing the exact words of the Constitution, and we want to make sure that the people of Afghanistan or the ultimate judges, because the next government has to finish the unfinished chapter of our history that began in 1919, and they must have a mandate and clarity of that. Reforms. Let me just highlight some issues. First one is not used to seeing Afghanistan emerge as the top performer in any indice. But a couple of weeks ago, the Doing Business indicators of the World Bank ranked Afghanistan as the top performer among 10 performers in reform in the business environment. There's a generational change. 49% of the Afghan cabinet is under 40. And this is taking place across both central and provincial government. Women's participation is increased very significantly, and we are determined to further increase it. Both the youth and women of Afghanistan, as well as the other strata, but particularly these two, I'm very proud to say, can speak for themselves. They don't need interpreters. They're networked, they're connected, and they're dedicated. Creating the legal basis of a functioning state and a dynamic economy has been probably our most significant legacy. Close to 400 pieces of legislation have been passed. Just to give you some illustration, the criminal code was totally revised. Bankruptcy law that had not been revised since 1932 was revised. Municipal law that had not been revised since 1920s. This, I think, parallels the type of efforts that were taken by countries like Korea, and when China embarked, but particularly Korea, Hong Kong, and China, and a number of other places. Subnational reform has been critical objective. Afghanistan in the past has been either experiencing the wrong kind of centralization, where everything is stuck at the center, or the wrong kind of decentralization, where you go towards strongman rule at the locality without rights and obligation. We have 5 levels of governance. The village has truly been empowered. The National Solidarity Program that I had the honor of initiating when I was finance minister is now being replaced by a citizen charter, and this program, unlike national solidarity, is encompassing both urban and rural areas. Municipal reform has been very significant. Our mayors were selected through a very competitive process, and I read at least 120 submissions to learn and interact with them, or really marking. Our key weakness is in the area of district governance, and our focus now is to ensure that district governance comes from the shadow of war, and civilian leadership at the district level comes. And the last issue is definition of provincial rights and obligations to make sure that we can move forward. Anti-corruption is a thread that ties everything together. I've personally chaired over 166 sessions of the National Procurement Council, because about 18% of the GDP is in procurement, and the state is the most significant actor. We are proud, Mr. Oteki leads this effort, that we are moving towards electronic procurement, and now centralizing procurement so the speed can be achieved. The Center for Justice is indicted 3-star generals, deputy ministers, and others, and people are serving in prisons. But changing the culture of corruption to a culture of accountability is our most significant challenge. This is what I hope the generational and gender change and redefinition of authorities. Our approach is to redefine the rules of the game. Fundamentally, corruption was driven by informal rules prevailing over formal rules. Weak accountability, fragmented institutions were a result of this, and particularly our security forces were haunted. Anti-corruption effort in the army, I think, has really gone far, and, for instance, claims of ghost soldiers would be practically non-existent. They could not be verified. In police, we still have a way to go. But the most significant change that has happened in this area has been our rule of law approach. The Supreme Court, which had a reputation for mismanagement or corruption, now today is considered one of the cleanest institutions, and I'm honored that I nominated 3 judges that have been approved, and I've nominated the other 3 judges. The Attorney General office, again, changed from being accused or described in public as a source of driving corruption to one that drives reforms. Institutionally, anti-corruption is critical to us, not because just the international community is in agreement that anti-corruption is fundamental. Our people demand anti-corruption. And again, let's understand the cost of corruption is borne by the poorest citizens. And empowering the citizens to be selected, to be provided with services, etc., is a key to creating trust. Regional connectivity has been another major focus. Afghanistan had only one railway terminal in 2014. Now we have two more with Turkmenistan, one in the province of Faryab and the other in Herat, and we are working both on transmission lines. Last week, a private sector memorandum was signed where several thousand megawatts of power will be transferred directly from Turkmenistan via Afghanistan to Pakistan. Railway, Dr. Qayyumi is leading an effort for railway from province of Balkh to province of Herat that could significantly change regional connectivity, in TAPI and other TUTAP and other projects in CASA are all underway. But that's the beginning. We hope our trade with Central Asia is every year increased by leaps and bounds, and we hope. The air corridor that we launched with India, with $800,000 of state support, our exports increased very substantially. Recently in Mumbai, a memorandum of understanding for over $200 million. A couple of weeks ago, we launched the first Pine-Nut corridor to China, and now through Turkish Airlines, we've been able to reach Europe, and Saudi Arabia and Emirates are part of the series of air corridors. The land corridors, however, are the transformative element, Lapis Lazuli to Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and equally, the opening of Uzbekistan has been transformational. Cost of connectivity to China has been halved. The speed brought from 3 months to 1 week. Afghanistan is fast taking advantage of the close to 3 billion market, India, China, the region, and moving on. Let me conclude with politics as a vocation. My Johns Hopkins period, my Columbian Johns Hopkins period, were particularly marked by Max Weber's essay on politics as a vocation, and John Dewey's essay on citizenship, where he argued that the public is formed through a conversation. We faced impossible odds, seemingly impossible odds. We still face very difficult choices and conditions. But human agency, the Afghan seeking dignity based on an immensely rich historical heritage of thousands of years, a sense of egalitarianism, and a place earned by sacrifice, national unity, where the slogan that I run with, that no Afghan is superior to another Afghan or inferior to other Afghan, that is literally a paraphrasing of the Constitution. Global partnerships in regional partnerships are our way out of this. We can, must, and will overcome the recent past. Next year, 2019, are going to be marked by 2 anniversaries. The 40th year of Soviet invasion that plunged us into immense suffering, loss of millions, refuge of tens of millions, and destruction of all our infrastructure and assets, but also the 100-year anniversary of our independence, that when we declared independence in 1919, we were one of the very few countries then in the Muslim world and in Asia that was stable and with a vision. The unfinished chapter of 1919 both beckons us and haunts us. It beckons us because it argues that we must finish and close the vicious circle. It haunts us because if the dream is not fulfilled, it would become a nightmare. We are keen to reclaim our civilizational heritage, and let me argue that despite all the problems, this is a fundamentally moderate society. There are extremist groups and individuals, but the society is a fundamentally consensus-seeking and moderate society. And to own our future. Thank you for the opportunity for conversation. I'm delighted to be with you virtually, and let me thank again the Hopkins community for years of friendship and an environment that truly was unique. As you know, John Dewey graduated from there, and the seminar was invented there. I've learned the meaning of community through my colleagues, and have learned enormous amount, and particularly when I had the pleasure and honor of teaching some of the best students in working with colleagues. Let me also thank Mr. Josh Brickman and Mr. Fazil Haq Akmal for making this event happen, and Mr. Hoteki and Dr. Qayyumi for being with you. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, President Ghani. It's terrific to see you once again. I've got the honor of moderating some questions that have been posed by our students, and then after perhaps addressing a few of those, we'll open up the discussion for questions from the audience, which also includes the media. So here's a few thoughts framed by some of our students here at SAIS. Number one, given the recent security incidents across Afghanistan, how would you, Mr. President, describe the overall security situation in the country as a whole?
Would you like me to take the questions one by one?
That would be terrific, sir, if you can do that. And I think I've got 2 or 3 or so here from the students, and then we'll identify people in the audience to ask questions in about 5 or 10 minutes.
Sure. The question of security is the following dimension. Is the state at risk of collapse? No. Why? Because as long as we have our commando forces and our air force, we will be able to retake. Are the losses horrific? Yes. Most of the losses occur in defensive positions because deployment was static, and we are rethinking this. What is driving it? What is driving it is that now, I will humbly submit, the South Asia strategy is under attack. We feel that all the conditions for a breakthrough are available to move forward, but positioning to make sure that peace does not take place from strength, but from perceived weakness. If we experienced this before, yes. We first experienced it in 2006 when we came from Brussels conference. All 6 of our army corps were attacked, and we were able to overcome it. Second, 6 weeks prior to the election, we saw some of the worst fighting, and we overcame. At that time, the media predicted the fall of up to 5 provinces. None of that happened. Bottom line, again, the nature of the war is not between armies. If it were that, it would be a different war. What makes this war horrible is that civilians and social institutions, communities are attacked. And there, we need the global voice and regional voice to emphatically come and say this is unacceptable. This type of war is no result that is productive, and its most dangerous thing is that it could break the consensus that is forged through years of effort regarding seeking peace.
Mr. President, a related question on cooperation between the coalition, the United States, its security forces, and those of Afghanistan. As we look at that long-standing now, almost 18-year security cooperation effort, where would you say it is the strongest today, and where would you see that cooperation needs change or needs some improvements?
Well, first of all, General Barno, I would like to thank you as a former commander of ISAF, and say thank you to all your predecessors and successors, and to say what a terrific privilege it's been for me to work with General Campbell, General Nicholson, and now General Miller. Unlike the period that I think you commanded, Afghan government and the United States see totally eye to eye. Illustration. One of the most significant reforms was implementation of the inherent law, where hundreds of generals were retired with benefits. There's a total renewal of the leadership. The Afghan army that now exists, I think you would probably not recognize. It has come to its own. Second, there's a clear division of labor. We are doing the fighting and the dying, as it is our obligation. The support is precise, it is well thought through, and it's demand-driven. I think one could not ask for better partners. Where we are focused now is to make sure systems and processes are built on the one hand, and leadership and management takes place, but equally, as I brought to you, by 2024, Afghanistan has to assume the major burden for paying for its security forces. This is a very constructive dialogue. I welcome it, and I think the environment of trust is very high. What happens, and that's why I singled out Major Taylor, green on blue is an area of attack, and when that happens, of course, it is very hard. In 2018, American casualties have been 9. Again, 9 too many. But we are totally focused to ensure that the penetration doesn't take place. Strengthening is along. We have agreed on a 4-year reform program, that the first year of which has been implemented. Implementing that is resulted in doubling of our commando force, tripling of our air force. As long as we continue on this course, I think we'll be fine.
Thanks, Mr. President. I think as you're keenly aware, I know Americans today, when they think about Afghanistan, and even our most recently installed commander there, General Miller, has spoken about this, that the future in Afghanistan is not going to be, in the security sense, a military solution, but is going to have to come from some sort of negotiated settlement with the Taliban. Can you talk to us a little bit about your assessment on how serious the Taliban is about pursuing peace talks with the Afghan and the U.S. governments, and what you think the prospects of reaching some sort of negotiated settlement today are?
Well, first of all wars have to end politically. I mean, there are very few wars, particularly the wars of the 21st century, that are going to end militarily. A divided society is not a harmonious society and cannot vision and move forward with ease. Because of this, as I stated, we've taken the ownership of the peace process. The Kabul process is bearing results. In past 17 years, an event like the ceasefire of June in Eid al-Fitr had not taken place. I feel that it's now not a condition, not a question of if, but when. The international level, there's total agreement between US government and the Afghan government to move the peace process forward, and US engagement is to ensure that talks with Taliban result not in negotiations with Taliban, but with talks direct talks between the Afghan government and Taliban. The Islamic dimension is equally very strong. We have challenges remaining in the regional dimension. And that's the key promise of SAS, the South Asia strategy, to be able to persuade particularly the significant actor where sanctuary and logistic support and ideological support is provided Taliban openly, Pakistan, into an engagement. But the most important area of interaction has to be inter-Afghan and then become broadened. I'm committed to this to make it happen because it's a demand of the society. The price of peace needs to be determined. We are a stakeholder society, and once the price becomes clear, we have to renew our consensus. So we must have a mechanism of endorsement nationally that brings us sustainable peace. The quest of the Afghan people is for enduring peace. For enduring peace, we are committed to make the necessary sacrifices. The process, however, must be a very open process. Peace cannot happen at midnight behind closed doors. It has to have a form, and I'm forming an advisory council to make sure, inclusive Afghan-wide, so we can consult on key issues rapidly, and I am hopeful.
Mr. President, at the beginning of our introductory remarks today, we noted that we're hosting this talk on the commemoration of Veterans Day here in the United States. In the last decade and a half or more, thousands of American and many tens of thousands of Afghan soldiers have lost their lives in the effort to protect the security of Afghanistan. Your forces and the Afghan National Security Force have taken particularly high losses, which continue to mount in recent months. How do you think this continued stress on the Afghan security forces, the numbers of casualties they're taking, will affect your ability to contain the settlement and bound their abilities and their offensive until some sort of settlement can be reached?
Thank you again. First, I pay tribute, as I did in my opening remarks, to American and NATO troops. According to our numbers, between 2001 and 2014, 2,357 American troops, 453 UK troops, and 676 NATO troops paid the ultimate sacrifice. We salute that sacrifice. The total number is 3,486. But that number has been reduced very significantly, as I brought to your attention. The total number of US, UK, and NATO troops that have lost their lives since 2015 is 71. Still too many. But the point is that previously, Americans and NATO forces were fighting for us and dying. We have assumed, because of this, I think we can say proudly that we are now partners, not dependents. Our casualties from 2001, 2005, where the war really started, 2014 were 507,004 martyrs. Our casualties since 2000 is 28,529. It is a major sacrifice. but it's a tribute to the Afghan forces that the army is not run away from a single place. They may have withdrawn and re-engaged. Also, our commando forces have not lost a battle. The key issue is, again, to emphasize the need, the urgent need for a political approach where regional support for this level of violence inflicted on a people ceases. That we've opened the political process. The United States is emphasized the political process because they were thinking there are obstacles. When I spoke at the ceasefire and declared the ceasefire, Secretary Pompeo welcomed it and supported it. We are able to move to the offensive position, and that's the key. One of the most important things is to consolidate the bases because they were planned during days when the Afghan army didn't have much to do. A lot of our losses are in static positions, and some of that are from failures of wearing protective gear and others. Those aspects will be addressed systematically. But again, it bears the word must protest against this type of violence inflicted upon a country where for 39 continuous years is bearing the burden. We need a respite. We need a breakthrough from this vicious circle. We are not a battleground of proxy wars. We are a people who offer a very distinctive vision for being the platform for cooperation, both globally and regionally.
Mr. President, one last question before we open it up to the audience, which includes some media. What message would you give to Pakistan in terms of what your expectations are for how they can help support a reconciliation and a negotiated solution to this long-running conflict?
We put our relationship with Pakistan under three categories. First, support for violence has not benefited Afghanistan or Pakistan. This specter needs to be removed, and the way of removing it is support for direct discussions between the Afghan government and Taliban. Second, the undeclared war between Afghanistan and Pakistan must end. We have not supported any movement against Pakistan from Afghanistan. The Afghan soil has not been used. We've exercised immense restraint and control because we seek a cooperative relationship. Second, we need to define what is a normal relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and we can offer a lot in the way of cooperation. We are the key to Central Asia. How will Pakistan get to Central Asia without a stable Afghanistan? All the work on energy and others, the connectivity, is to a bridge, a connector, a roundabout, is to make sure that is connecting people. So connecting Central Asia and the Caucasus to South Asia involves. The third is we need to together agree with the United States and the rest of the international community on counterterrorism. These three sets of relationship are key. From the day that President Trump announced the South Asia strategy, I extended the hand of friendship. We've engaged in several rounds. On paper, APAPS, the document that we've arrived at, is a really good document. What is our expectation is to translate those commitments into reality and help us reduce the level of violence and move forward to a lasting and just peace.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. We're going to open it up now to questions from the audience here. For those of you in the audience who'd like to ask a question, I'll recognize you. I'm not sure if we have mics or not, but if need be, I will repeat your question so that it can be heard on the microphone. Please identify yourself and your affiliation, and please phrase your comments in the form of a question with a question mark at the end. All right, in the front first. Front right, yes. Well, let's bring a microphone up if we could.
Thank you very much, sir. My name is Aaron Mohabit. I'm a student at American University. And my question to you, President Ashraf Ghani, is if the Taliban believes that they are in a winning position in this war, then how can the Afghan government reach a peace deal that is in favor of the nation? Thank you.
The Taliban are not in a winning position. Let them disclose their casualties. Let them answer to the mothers who've lost their children. Let them answer to the wounded, and let them answer to communities that because of their interference have been deprived of education, of health, of services. Where is the positive model of the strength? If they've been able to transform a single village in a positive direction, if they change the condition of 10,000, 1,000 youth to change them into agents of a constructive Afghanistan, the perception of strength is false. This war is supported, enabled by dependence. Their choice. Are they willing to accept the Afghan community as they were accepted during the ceasefire? Or will they reject a social compact? Afghanistan's social makeup is a source of richness, and the ceasefire showed that they're welcome. We will not engage in a peace from position of weakness. And again, the sacrifice of our soldiers, non-commissioned officers, all ranks of our security forces shows that the will is there, but my key submission is that the bloodletting is unnecessary. On the negotiating table, we can arrive at a just and lasting peace that is inclusive and allows us to overcome the past.
Next question here in the white.
Thank you very much. My name is Nazira Azim Karimi, Khabarnigar Azad. I'm an independent Afghan journalist. I would like to ask my question in Dari. جناب رئیس جمهور افغانستان بسیار زیاد تشکر از اینکه با وجود مصروفیت‌های زیاد در حضور ما قرار گرفتین. سوال من این است که امنیت روز به روز وخیم‌تر شده میره یکی و جریان روند صلح به رهبری دکتر زلمه خلیلزاد نماینده خاص وزارت امور خارجه ایالات متحده آمریکا آغاز شد یک ماه قبل خوبم پیش رفته. نیویورک تایمز مقاله را نشر کرد و از قول شما ذکر کرد که مسائل بسیار عمده و حاد در مورد افغانستان مذاکره با سران طالبان با شما در میان گذاشتن نمیشه. آیا این دقیق است؟ و همچنان طالبان گفتن که با مقامات امریکا در مورد خروج جدول زمانی خروج قوایشان مشوره کردند. آیا امریکا این مسئله را با شما در میان گذاشته؟ تشکر.
تشکر. دکتر خلیلزاد ما دوستای 53 سال هستیم. دیروز هم جلسه داشتیم، امروز هم جلسه داشتیم. دکتر خلیلزاد هم امرای یک گروپ بسیار برجسته زنای افغان و هم اعضای شورای صلح درست پیش مجلس تفصیلی داشتن و در تمام از این مورد وضاحت دادن که نقش از اینا نقش تسهیل کننده است. نقش از اینا نقش رهبری کننده نیست. رهبری پروسه صلح، مالکیت پروسه صلح در دست حکومت افغانستان است. ماشین پروپاگاند طالبان منبع حقیقت نیست. وضاحت کامل داشته باشین و دکتر صاحب خلیلزاد میره با وضاحت گفتن که گروه افغانایی که مسئولیت دارن و نسل نو افغانه که امروز در صحنه به صورت اساسی ظاهر شده از خود نمایندگی کردن میتونه و طرح از ابتدا از ما بود، پیشنهاد از ما بوده و اجماع ملی را که در بخش با وجود آمده نتیجه بحث‌های سرتاسری افغان ها بود.
For the advantage of everyone else, we'll ask Dean Nasser to translate that for us in synopsis.
Just translate a very quick synopsis. The question was whether the United States representative in the peace process is adequately consulting the Afghan government on the process. And the president's answer was that many of the ideas and the plans have actually come from the Afghan government, and there's ongoing consultation and discussion as the reconciliation plan goes forward.
Thank you. All right, let's see. Yes, ma'am, right here.
Hi, I'm Becky Van Doren, used to be with the State Department. I'm interested in asking Mr. President what your views of the new Pakistan government are, and what your hopes are for working out the differences and issues you have with them, with this new government.
Yes, thank you. We've not yet seen the sense of urgency, and we hope that sense of urgency can be brought to the picture. We have a framework, which is the Afghanistan-Pakistan agreement. The key is to move from talking to taking action. As I repeat, our framework, our national interest is to keep engaging with Pakistan, and we seek a stable Pakistan. But we need to see substantive and measurable change. As of yet, that substantive and measurable change with the government of Prime Minister Imran Khan has not been seen. But this is what needs to take place, and I think the South Asia strategy, we're grateful to the United States and other partners that they are keenly seeking this engagement, and the constructive option that is on the table is the option that we seek and is in the interest of Pakistan in the region.
This man right here, in red.
Elaine Sereo, Associate Rector of UACU WIUU in Kiev, Ukraine. President Ghani, thank you very much for addressing us today. Regarding Afghan's development goals for societal stability, as the former chancellor of Kabul University, and now the leader of the Afghan nation, how would you envision the, quote, as you said, demand for balanced development to be leveraged by higher education institutions in Afghanistan in context with Afghanistan's development goals? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, the best job I had was that at Kabul University. I'm very proud to be performing this job, but that's the one I really love. Dr. Qayyumi could provide you a lot more, but I'll just say, first, what is really heartwarming is the way Afghan society, elders, in particular, women, are endorsing or embracing education now. In Helmand and in Paktika, two provinces that General Barno knows very well. I was there recently, and in each one, there was a remarkable set of statements from the elders, whom I met separately from youth and others, as I said, groups. And they were saying the key area of investment that needs to take place is education. The president of Paktika University got up and said, because it's just begun, it's one of the youngest universities. He says, look at Khost. In 17 years, the investment in Khost University, which is called the Sheikh Zayed University, because Abu Dhabi very generously helped us, transformed Khost into a real center of dynamism. This is across the board, whether it's been Kapisa or Badghis or other provinces. What Dr. Qayoumi has been made a critical contribution in is now we have created a platform for learning from MIT with hundreds of universities, including MIT. But the most significant change likely is to make the curriculum and the support resources from the Indian Institutes of Technology and Indian Institute of Business for about 2 million Afghans. We have to fundamentally change from a book-focused and a teacher-focused education to a student-focused education. The younger generation is really ready for this. Again, in the universities, we implemented the program of retirement that is brought a new leadership. I was in Bamiyan University. When I was in Kabul University, the absolute majority of the teachers had BA's degrees from the same university. In Bamiyan University, 8 PhDs, around 63 masters, another 8 for PhD, and another 60. Only 13, the two master's figures, I'm citing from memory, so at BA degrees. We are witnessing a fundamental change, and particularly now we're focused on the primary and secondary. Our other track that again Dr. Qayoumi is leading is vocational and technical dual track. Finland, one of the most advanced countries, is at 21% unemployment a couple of years back. Switzerland at 2.5%. The difference, the dual track educational system, where vocational education is being retaught, and there's a brilliant Afghan woman, Nadima Sar, that is directing this independent agency. So it's really about human capital, because our natural capital, thank God, is immense, though threatened because of environmental change. Human capital is really the future, and we're very keen. And our cooperation, again, needs to be online. Technical assistance delivered the old way is not required. Illustration, the plan for Kabul that I'd been seeking for over 15 years, we were able to prepare with a firm from Boston called Sasaki, a brilliant firm, and everything was done online. Now it's a 6-volume framework that enables us, hopefully, to really transform Kabul. So ways of cooperation, definition of education, and particularly knowing the fourth industrial revolution, that the definition of work and employment is going to fundamentally change, needs to be really taken. And I have colleagues like Dr. Qayoumi and Mr. Hotaki that are in the forefront of this, and very proud to defer to Dr. Qayoumi for further comments.
We have room for one more question before I ask Dean Nasser to come up and express our gratitude once again to President Ashraf Ghani. I would also note that we're going to have the opportunity, once the President departs, to hear from Minister of Finance Qayoumi as well, who's here in the audience briefly. So I'd ask you to remain in your seats to listen to his remarks here. Sir, right here in the golden tie. Let's grab a microphone if we could so we can hear that in Kabul.
William Zarban from Conflict Management at SAIS. First of all, President Ghani, let me congratulate you on your recent induction into the Hopkins Society of Scholars, the university's highest honor. My question remains about the negotiations with the Taliban. Since eventually the United States troops will be gone or highly diminished and the Taliban will be part of the government, what are we negotiating for? That is, what concessions can we expect to get from the Taliban? And what are we negotiating with? That is, what kind of pressure can we put on them?
Thank you, Professor Zartman. It's great to see you. I've always benefited from your views in writing and also the various conferences that we've been together. It was a privilege to be inducted into the Society of Fellows. I greatly value it. Unfortunately, I couldn't come in person. Our ambassador, who's now our national security advisor, presented me. you have peace as a process and not as an event, precisely to understand how to reach agreement. The answer to your question is premature because we need to sit together to define. So our approach is, and we have done this in Mari, this is not the first round, there was a round that began in Mari, but then when the news of Mullah Omar's passing away leaked, it brought an end to that process. The team that will start, their key task at first will be to provide a table of content and a list of issues. Each side is critical issues, and then there are common issues. For instance, return of refugees is a common issue. I've reviewed over 100 peace agreements of the 1990s, and they fall into very distinctive categories. One of the most significant will be, how do you incorporate the fighters? How do you transform a military movement into a political party, etc.? Those parts are standard, but there are distinctive questions in those critical questions from both of our sides. From us, it's going to be, what assurance are we going to have that the deal that is stuck is not going to be replaced by another state-sponsored group? So commitments must be both between two parties and commitments regionally. Taliban will have questions to the United States and to us. That the key is that there is no question that is off the table. The process of negotiation will bring about depth, breadth, and nuance to the issues. And as I brought P4 to you, this is where we go back. When we are confronted with key questions, we need to consult a range of stakeholders, and hence the advisory group and the Peace Council as mechanisms of that. So we need to go with an open mind, and in the process understand what unites us, what divides us, how do we overcome the divisions and ensure that a process. Equally, it's very important to differentiate between peace and security. Latin American and Central American agreements of the 1990s that endured actually brought peace but not security. There was an increase in insecurity, but was criminalization. So it's important to see that the public support translates to peace. Nepal, again, was a case where peace did not immediately result in security. We have to make sure, and from the perspective of the new generation of Afghans, the new Afghans, and particularly from the perspective of the Afghan women, ensuring the gains of the last 17 years in the chapter of the Constitution on Rights and Obligation is going to be a very, very central issue. As well as if the Constitution needs to be amended, it can only be amended through the constitutionally defined process. So we are prepared to tackle all the issues, and we hope we can reach closure. Thank you again for your question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dean Nasser.
Thank you, Mr. President, for a very rich conversation, for joining us today and sharing with us your vision. I would like to know you to know that we are all wishing for your success, and you can count our good wishes as well as all of the support that we can give at this very critical juncture for Afghanistan. Please join me in thanking President Ashraf Ghani.
Dean Nasser, I who would like to say thank you to you and to all the participants in today's discussion, and again, to thank the Hopkins community for years of friendship and engagement.